Sarah Martinez always knew she was different. Growing up in New Mexico's desert landscape, she'd catch her reflection in mirrors and wonder why her violet eyes seemed to shift color with her emotions, or why her skin had a subtle, silvery sheen under the moonlight. Her mother, Elena, would simply smile sadly and say, "You're special, mi amor," before changing the subject. It wasn't until Sarah turned 16 that Elena finally revealed the truth about that strange night in 1989. On a warm summer evening, while the Perseid meteor shower painted the sky, Elena had encountered a man unlike any other. He called himself Aldrich, and his otherworldly beauty had captivated her instantly. His skin held the same silvery luminescence that Sarah would later inherit, and his eyes were pools of shifting cosmic light. "He wasn't from here," Elena had whispered, clutching a worn photograph that showed a striking man with sharp, elegant features. "Not from Earth at all. He told me he was a scout from a civilization in the Pleiadian star cluster, studying human culture. We fell in love over the course of 3 months. But he couldn't stay, his mission had strict protocols." Sarah had spent years processing this revelation, understanding why she could sense others' emotions, why technology seemed to malfunction around her when she was upset, and why she could sometimes move small objects without touching them. She was half alien, a hybrid being with capabilities she was only beginning to understand. Now, at 35, Sarah had built a carefully controlled life as a successful architect in Seattle. Her unique abilities gave her an edge in her work. She could envision structures in perfect detail, and somehow knew exactly how materials would interact. She'd learned to hide her differences, to blend in despite her ethereal beauty that turned heads wherever she went. Everything changed when she met James Sullivan, a recently divorced client looking to build his dream home. He brought his teenage son, Nathan, to their first meeting. At 17, Nathan had his father's strong jaw and dark hair, but there was something else about him, something that made Sarah's alien senses tingle with recognition. As she shook Nathan's hand, a jolt of energy passed between them. For a brief moment, she saw flashes of stars and distant worlds reflected in his eyes. Her heart raced as a terrible realization dawned: Nathan had traces of non-human DNA too. The implications were staggering. Could James's ex-wife have also encountered a being from the stars? Sarah tried to maintain professional boundaries, but fate had other plans. James, impressed with her work, insisted on regular meetings to discuss the house plans. Each time Nathan accompanied his father, the connection between them grew stronger. She could sense his confusion about his own nature, his feeling of being different, just as she had felt at his age. The project progressed, and James began inviting her to family dinners, viewing her as a friend. When he started dating again 6 months later, he asked Sarah to keep an eye on Nathan while he traveled for his new relationship. She knew she should decline, but the pull was too strong. She needed to understand why this young man stirred something so profound within her hybrid soul. One evening, as they sat in her living room discussing Nathan's college plans, she caught him staring at her violet eyes with intense curiosity. The air between them crackled with unspoken recognition. Sarah realized she was standing at a crossroads: continue hiding her true nature, or risk everything by showing Nathan he wasn't alone in his difference. Thunder rolled outside as she made her decision. "Nathan," she said softly, her heart pounding, "there's something I need to tell you about who, and what, I really am." Lightning illuminated her face, and for just a moment, her control slipped. Her eyes blazed with stellar fire, her skin rippling with waves of starlight. Nathan didn't recoil in fear. Instead, he leaned forward, his own eyes reflecting the same otherworldly glow, as the storm raged around them. This was only the beginning of a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and what it truly means to be human, or something more than human. Nathan sat motionless in Sarah's modernist living room, his eyes fixed on the ethereal glow emanating from her skin. Outside, the storm continued its assault on Seattle, but inside, time seemed to stand still. The revelation of Sarah's true nature hung in the air between them, electric and dangerous. "I always knew there was something different about me." Nathan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "My mother, she never wanted to talk about it. She'd get this haunted look whenever I'd ask about the strange things I could do." He raised his hand, and the coffee cup on the table shifted slightly without his touch. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. His abilities were more developed than she'd imagined. "Your mother," she began carefully. "Did she ever mention someone like my father? A visitor during a meteor shower?" Nathan's face paled. "The Leonids. November 1999. She has this old journal. I found it in the attic when I was 13. She wrote about a man named Kien who appeared in a flash of light." He paused, struggling with the weight of his own revelation. I'm like you, aren't I? Half human, half something else? Sarah moved closer, her architectural plans for his father's house forgotten on the coffee table. We're what they call star-touched. My father's people, they've been studying Earth for centuries, sending scouts to learn about humanity. Sometimes these scouts form connections, and now you're going to marry my dad, Nathan said, the complex implications of their situation settling over them both. Does he know? No, Sarah admitted, her violet eyes dimming with worry. I've never told anyone except my therapist, and she thinks I'm speaking metaphorically. She gave a bitter laugh. How do you tell someone that their fiancé isn't fully human? Lightning flashed again, and Nathan's eyes reflected the light in a way no humans should. I can sense things about people, their emotions, their intentions. That's how I know my dad is truly happy with you. But I also sense something else. He trailed off, confusion and another emotion Sarah didn't dare name crossing his face. The connection between star-touched individuals is intense, Sarah explained, choosing her words carefully. We're drawn to each other because there are so few of us. It's a recognition of kindred spirits. Even as she spoke, she felt the pull between them strengthening, like gravity between twin stars. Is that all it is? Nathan asked, standing now, his 6-foot frame towering over her. At 17, he was already showing signs of his otherworldly heritage, the subtle luminescence of his skin, the preternatural grace of his movements. Sarah stood as well, maintaining distance even as every cell in her body urged her closer. Nathan, we need to be careful. Your father, I know. He cut her off, running a hand through his dark hair in frustration. But I need to understand what this means. All my life, I've felt like I was living behind a mask. Then you show up, and suddenly everything makes sense, but it also becomes infinitely more complicated. A loud knock at the door made them both jump. Sarah? Nathan? James's voice called out. I caught an earlier flight back. Thought I'd surprise you both. Sarah and Nathan exchanged panicked looks. In an instant they both pulled their otherworldly aspects back under control, their skin returning to a normal human appearance. But as Sarah moved to answer the door, Nathan caught her arm. We're not done with this conversation, he whispered, his touch sending sparks of stellar energy through them both. There's more to this than just being star-touched, isn't there? Sarah met his gaze, seeing in it the same desperate need for understanding that had haunted her own youth. Yes, she admitted quietly. There's more. Much more. She pulled away to open the door, greeting James with a smile that hid the turmoil in her heart. As she watched James embrace his son, Sarah realized she was now keeper of two explosive secrets, not only her own alien heritage, but Nathan's as well. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, 2 scouts from an advanced civilization had left behind children who would now have to navigate the complicated waters of forbidden attraction and family loyalty. The storm outside began to subside, but Sarah knew it was nothing compared to the tempest building in her heart. She had found another like herself, someone who truly understood her nature, but he was the one person she could never allow herself to love. The weeks following their mutual revelation became an exquisite torture. Sarah threw herself into wedding preparations with James, trying to ignore the electric current that charged the air whenever Nathan entered a room. Their shared secret created an intimate bond that grew stronger by the day, despite their best efforts to maintain distance. During a sunny Saturday afternoon, while James was at a business meeting, Sarah was reviewing the final plans for their new home in her office when Nathan appeared in the doorway. He'd started his senior year of high school, and the changes in him were becoming more pronounced. His dark hair now had subtle highlights that seemed to shift color in different lights, and his movements had taken on an almost hypnotic grace. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. I've been doing research. About the scouts, about what we are. He pulled out an old astronomy journal from his backpack. There was a documented surge in unusual stellar activity during both the Pleiades of 89 and the Leonids of 99. The exact nights our fathers arrived. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the journal. Nathan, we shouldn't. I've been having dreams. He interrupted, his voice urgent. About a city made of crystal and light, floating in space. Sometimes I see you there, wearing robes that flow like liquid starlight. Tell me you haven't seen it too. She closed her eyes, fighting back the image that had haunted her own dreams for weeks. It's called Luminaria, she whispered. The capital city of the Pleiadian civilization. Our father's home, so it's real? Nathan moved closer, his presence making the air around them shimmer slightly. Everything I've been seeing, feeling, it's all real, yes, Sarah admitted, finally looking up at him. As we get closer to maturity, which happens later for hybrids like us, Our abilities and connections to our alien heritage strengthen. But Nathan, we can't what? Talk about it. Explore who and what we are. His frustration manifested in a subtle vibration of the objects in the room. You're the only one who understands what this is like. The only one who knows what it feels like to have this power humming under your skin, to see things others can't, to feel things so intensely it hurts. Sarah stood, needing to put physical distance between them. Your father loves me, Nathan. In 2 months I'm going to be your stepmother, and you love him. Nathan said, his voice softening. I know you do. I can feel it. But this, he gestured between them. This is something else entirely. Something neither of us asked for or expected. A knock on the office door made them both jump. Sarah? Honey, are you in there? James called out. Just reviewing some final plans with Nathan. She called back, trying to keep her voice steady. But as she moved toward the door, her control slipped for just a moment, and a wave of her power brushed against Nathan's. The contact sent a cascade of shared visions through them both, stars exploding into life, the crystalline spires of Luminaria reaching toward twin suns, and a future that both thrilled and terrified them. James entered, smiling at them both, completely unaware of the moment he'd interrupted. Great! How about we all grab dinner? I'm thinking that new Italian place downtown. Actually, Dad, Nathan said, his voice remarkably composed despite the intensity of what had just passed between them. I promised Mom I'd have dinner with her tonight. Wedding details and all that. As Nathan left, he gave Sarah one last look that held volumes of unspoken words. She turned away, focusing on James's warm embrace, trying to ignore the fact that she could still feel Nathan's presence like a phantom limb, even as he drove away. Later that night, alone in her bed, Sarah's phone lit up with a text from Nathan. I found something in my mom's journal. Something about a prophecy. The joining of 2 star-touched bloodlines. We need to talk about what this really means. Sarah stared at the message until her vision blurred with tears. The gravity of their situation was pulling them toward an inevitable collision, and she wasn't sure if her love for James would be strong enough to keep them in separate orbits. In the sky above Seattle, the stars seemed to pulse with ancient knowledge, as if they too were waiting to see how this impossible love story would unfold. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Sarah arrived at 6 a.m., her heart pounding against her ribs. She'd chosen this early hour and remote location to minimize the chance of being seen. Nathan was already there, a leather-bound journal on the table before him. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept. My mother's handwriting changes halfway through, he said without preamble, opening the journal to a marked page. It's like something else was writing through her. Look at this. Sarah leaned forward, her breath catching as she saw the elegant, flowing script that seemed to shimmer on the page. When stellar blood mingles twice on Earth's shore, 2 hearts will beat as one, forevermore. Power ancient beyond human knowing, in their union, stellar gifts flowing. The first hybrid pair to join as one, will bridge 2 worlds when day is done, there's more. Nathan continued, flipping the page. Dates, star charts, and what looks like genetic sequences. My mom wrote that Ken told her about a legend among the scouts. They believed that when 2 star-touched individuals of different bloodlines found each other, their union would create something unprecedented, a bridge between Earth and Luminaria. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the journal. This can't be about us. It's impossible, is it? Nathan's voice was low, intense. Think about it, Sarah. Our fathers were from different clans in Luminaria. We're the first 2 star-touched hybrids to ever meet. And this? He gestured between them, causing the air to ripple with energy. This connection isn't normal, even for our kind. A nearby light fixture flickered in response to their combined agitation. Sarah forced herself to take deep breaths, trying to maintain control. Even if this prophecy is real, it doesn't matter. I'm marrying your father in 6 weeks. The invitations have been sent, the venue is booked, and every time you kiss him, you're thinking of me. Nathan interrupted, his eyes flaring with stellar fire. I can feel it, Sarah. Just like you can feel how I don't. She cut him off sharply. Don't say it. The silence between them was deafening. Outside, the first rays of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, but neither of them noticed. They were too caught up in the gravity of their situation, the weight of destiny pressing down on them. There's something else, Nathan finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. He pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. 3 days ago, astronomers detected unusual activity in the Pleiades cluster. They're calling it an astronomical anomaly, but look at the pattern. Sarah studied the image, her heart skipping a beat. The energy signature matched exactly the patterns in Nathan's mother's journal. They're coming, she breathed. The scouts, they're returning. The prophecy mentions bridging two worlds, Nathan said. What if our meeting isn't just about us? What if it's about something bigger? Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from James. Where are you, honey? Stopped by your place with breakfast. Reality crashed back in like a tidal wave. She stood abruptly, gathering her things. I can't do this. I can't hurt him like this. Sarah, wait. Nathan called after her. As she reached the door, his powers flared, and every electronic device in the coffee shop went haywire. Lights flashed, phones chimed, and the espresso machine began steaming on its own. She turned back, her own powers rising to meet his. For a moment, they stood locked in an invisible embrace of pure energy, their auras intertwining in ways that defied human understanding. The entire coffee shop hummed with power, and the early morning barista stared at them in bewilderment. Tonight, Sarah finally said, regaining control. Come to my studio after your father goes to sleep. Bring the journal. If we're going to understand what this means, we need to do it right. As she drove home to meet James, her mind raced with possibilities. The prophecy, the returning scouts, the undeniable pull between her and Nathan, it all seemed to be building towards something monumental. But was she ready to risk everything? Her relationship with James, her carefully constructed life, her very understanding of who she was, for a destiny she never asked for? The answer whispered in her blood, in the stellar fire that coursed through her veins, in the way her soul reached for Nathan's even now. Whether she was ready or not, forces beyond her control were already in motion, and the stars themselves seemed to be conspiring to bring them together. Sarah's architectural studio, a converted warehouse space with floor-to-ceiling windows, felt different at midnight. Moonlight streamed through the glass panels, casting elongated shadows across her drafting tables and model displays. She had just finished hiding her engagement ring in her desk drawer. Its presence felt like a betrayal of what she was about to explore, when she sensed Nathan's approach before he even knocked. It's open, she called softly, and the door swung inward without anyone touching it. Nathan entered, carrying not only his mother's journal but also a small metallic object she'd never seen before. I found this hidden in the same box as the journal, he said, placing the object on her main drafting table. It was an octagonal disc, about the size of his palm, covered in swirling patterns that seemed to move in the moonlight. I think it's some kind of key. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the metal, the disc began to hum, its patterns glowing with a soft blue light. Nathan placed his hand beside hers, and suddenly the room filled with a holographic display of star systems and celestial bodies. By the stars, Sarah breathed, watching as the projection focused on the Pleiades cluster. This is a star map. Our fathers must have left these artifacts for us to find. The map zoomed in on a particular system, revealing the crystalline city they'd both seen in their dreams. Luminaria. But this time, they could see more detail. The city was in chaos. Energy storms raged around its spires, and parts of the crystal structures were darkening, dying. Something's wrong, Nathan said, his voice tight with concern. This city, it's failing. That's why they're coming back. They need us. As if responding to his words, the disk projected a new image, a double helix of DNA, but unlike anything found on Earth. The strands were interwoven with threads of light, and at specific points, human DNA merged with the alien structure. The prophecy, Sarah whispered, reaching for the journal. It's not just about romance or destiny. Look at this pattern. When two different star-touched bloodlines combine, they create a perfect fusion of human and Pleiadian DNA. Nathan finished, his scientific mind racing ahead. A bridge between worlds, literally written into our genetic code. The hologram shifted again, showing two figures surrounded by swirling energy. As they watched, the figures merged into a single point of light so bright it illuminated the entire studio. Sarah felt Nathan's hand find hers, and the contact sent sparks of energy racing up her arm. Sarah, he said, his voice rough with emotion. We need to try something. Just to understand what we're dealing with. She knew what he meant. Part of her wanted to run, to call off the wedding and flee to another country. But a deeper part, the part that hummed with stellar energy, knew this moment was inevitable. Just once, she whispered. To know for sure. Nathan stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. The air around them began to shimmer, reality itself seeming to bend as their powers responded to their proximity. When their lips finally met, the world exploded into light. Visions cascaded through their minds. Luminaria in its full glory, their father standing before a council of light beings, the prophecy being written in ancient times, and something more, a glimpse of a possible future where human and Pleiadian civilizations existed in harmony, bridged by something their union would create. The kiss lasted only seconds, but when they parted, the studio was in chaos. Papers swirled in an invisible wind, every electronic device was surging with power, and the very air crackled with energy. The star map disk was pulsing with intense light, projecting images faster than they could process. "Oh God!" Sarah gasped, stepping back. "What have we done?" Before Nathan could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. It was an emergency news alert. Astronomical observatories worldwide were reporting unprecedented activity in the Pleiades cluster. Whatever was coming, it was coming soon. As they stood in the moonlit studio, surrounded by the evidence of their shared destiny, Sarah realized with crushing clarity that she could no longer pretend. The choice before her was impossible: fulfill a prophecy that could save an alien civilization and possibly change humanity forever, or remain faithful to the man she had promised to marry. But as she looked at Nathan, seeing the same stellar fire in his eyes that burned in her soul, she wondered if it had ever really been a choice at all. The next morning hit like a meteor strike. Sarah sat in her kitchen, staring at her untouched coffee while the news droned in the background. Scientists worldwide were baffled by the continuing stellar phenomena in the Pleiades cluster. But she barely heard them. Her mind was replaying last night's kiss over and over. Her phone buzzed. "James. Can't wait to see you tonight, honey. Nathan's been acting strange. Maybe you could talk to him?" Her heart clenched. Before she could respond, another message came through from Nathan. "They're closer. I can feel them. Meet me at the observatory tonight?" The doorbell rang. Sarah opened it to find Nathan's mother, Miranda, standing there. Her face was ash-white. "We need to talk," Miranda said, clutching a familiar-looking octagonal disc. "About what's really happening with our children." Sarah's world tilted on its axis. She wasn't the only one keeping secrets, after all. The observatory loomed against the night sky, its dome gleaming under the stars. Nathan was already there, pacing the empty observation deck. When he saw Sarah approaching with his mother, he froze. "You knew," he said to Miranda. "All this time?" Miranda pulled out her disc, identical to Nathan's. When combined with Sarah's, the three devices formed a triangle and projected a complete message. The scouts weren't just returning, they were evacuating. Luminaria was dying, and Earth's hybrid children were their last hope. "There's more," Miranda said quietly. "James, he's not who you think he is." Sarah's engagement ring suddenly felt like it was burning her finger. "What do you mean? He's been watching you both. He works for a government agency that tracks extraterrestrial activity. He knows what you are." The stars above seemed to pulse with warning as Sarah's world crumbled around her. The revelation about James hit Sarah like a physical blow. Security cameras at the observatory caught her stumbling, with Nathan rushing to steady her. Neither of them noticed the red lights blinking on those cameras. "How long?" Sarah whispered to Miranda. "How long has he been watching us?" "From the beginning," Miranda replied. "He was assigned to track star-touched activity after our encounters with the scouts. Your relationship, the wedding proposal, it was all part of his mission." Nathan's powers flared with his anger, causing the observatory's equipment to spark. "Every dinner, every conversation about our future home, it was all a lie." Before anyone could respond, the observatory doors burst open. James stood there, but not in his usual business attire. He wore tactical gear, and behind him stood a team of armed agents. "I wouldn't say it was all a lie, Sarah," he said, his voice carrying none of its usual warmth. "The attraction was real. But you're both too valuable to remain unmonitored. Especially now." He held up a tablet showing the kiss from the studio. "Do you have any idea what your combined DNA could mean for national security?" Sarah felt her alien powers surging, responding to the threat. Beside her, Nathan's eyes blazed with stellar fire. Miranda stepped between them and the agents, holding up her disc. "James, you don't understand what's really at stake," Miranda began, but James cut her off with a cold laugh. "An alien civilization needs saving? We know. We decoded the transmissions weeks ago. But we have our own plans for hybrid DNA." The agents raised their weapons, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd cornered 3 star-touched individuals under a sky full of stars, their power source, during a Pleiadian energy surge. Sarah grabbed Nathan's hand, their powers joining in a cascade of light that filled the observatory dome. Above them, the stars seemed to pulse in response. The observatory erupted into chaos. Sarah and Nathan's combined powers created a shield of pure stellar energy, deflecting the tranquilizer darts the agents fired. Miranda's disc pulsed with blinding light, interfering with their electronic equipment. Last chance, Sarah, James called out, his weapon trained on them. Think about what we could achieve together. Controlled research, military applications, we could revolutionize human capability by experimenting on us. Nathan's voice crackled with power. By breeding a new generation of weapons? Suddenly, the night sky exploded with light. Through the observatory's dome, they watched as a massive ship materialized above Seattle, its crystalline structure identical to Luminaria's architecture. The scouts had arrived. James barked orders into his radio, but Sarah could barely hear him over the humming in her blood. She and Nathan were changing, their hybrid DNA responding to the Pleiadian presence. Their skin rippled with starlight, and the air around them bent like reality itself was warping. It's happening! Miranda gasped, watching as her son and the woman who was supposed to be his stepmother began to glow with impossible light. The prophecy, the bridge between worlds. James aimed his weapon, forced to choose between his mission and the woman he genuinely grown to love. But before he could decide, a beam of light from the ship above engulfed the observatory dome, and everything changed. The final transformation had begun, and not even the combined forces of Earth's governments could stop what was about to unfold. The light from the Pleiadian ship transformed the observatory into something between Earth and Luminaria, a space where both realities existed simultaneously. Sarah and Nathan floated inches above the ground, their joined hands emanating waves of stellar energy that rippled through both worlds. James and his agents found themselves frozen, unable to interfere with what their instruments were recording as the single most powerful energy surge ever detected on Earth. Through the dimensional tear above them, they could see Luminaria's crystal spires, dark and failing. This was never about just us, Sarah realized, her voice resonating with otherworldly harmonics. The prophecy wasn't about love, it was about survival. Both worlds need this. Nathan agreed, his form shifting between human and something gloriously alien. They need a bridge. They need hope. Miranda stepped forward, tears streaming down her face as she watched her son transcend his earthly form. The scouts knew, she said. They chose us, chose Earth, because humanity has something their civilization lost, the capacity to love beyond boundaries, to evolve beyond limitations. The Pleiadian ship pulsed, and voices filled their minds, the scouts, including their fathers, speaking across the gulf of space and time. The bridge is forming. 2 worlds will be saved through their union. James watched, his weapon forgotten at his side, as Sarah, the woman he'd been assigned to watch but had truly grown to love, became something beyond his understanding. His years of training, his mission, his beliefs about national security, none of it had prepared him for this moment of cosmic transcendence. Sarah turned to him one last time, her violet eyes now holding galaxies. I did love you, James. But some loves are written in the stars themselves. The energy surrounding Sarah and Nathan intensified until they were barely visible within it. Their DNA, shown in ghostly projections from the combined discs, spiraled together in a new pattern, neither human nor Pleiadian, but something entirely new. Something that could exist in both worlds, understanding both, bridging both. The dimensional tear widened, and through it poured healing energy that streamed toward Luminaria's failing systems. At the same time, knowledge and technology beyond human understanding filtered back through the bridge, offering solutions to Earth's greatest challenges. The exchange had begun, and it would continue as long as the bridge remained. When the light finally faded, Sarah and Nathan remained, transformed but still recognizable. They had become the living bridge between worlds, the first of a new kind of being that could traverse the gulf between stars. They were the fulfillment of the prophecy, but more importantly, they were the beginning of something greater than anyone had imagined. James lowered his weapon completely and ordered his agents to stand down. Some things, he realized, were bigger than national interests. Some loves really were written in the stars. Miranda activated her disc one final time, recording the last words of the prophecy that had started everything. When stellar hearts unite in love's pure light, 2 worlds shall heal in wisdom's sacred sight. Through chosen souls who dare to cross the line, Earth and stars at last shall intertwine. Above them, the Pleiadian ship became a permanent fixture in Earth's sky, a crystalline embassy between worlds. And at its heart, Sarah and Nathan began their new life together, no longer bound by earthly conventions or human limitations. They had become something else entirely, guardians of 2 worlds, keepers of the bridge, and living proof that love truly could transcend the boundaries of space, time, and even species. Their story would be told for generations on both worlds, not just as a tale of forbidden love, but as the moment when humanity took its first real steps into a larger universe. For in their union, they had discovered that the greatest power in any galaxy wasn't technology or genetic engineering, it was the courage to love beyond all boundaries.